So with BlizzCon being over, we've gotten a ton of new information on Diablo 4, specifically a ton of new information on new content coming to Season 2. So I wanted to split up all this new information into separate videos, so if you want to know about something specific, you can go watch the different video for that, because we've actually gotten quite a lot of new information, a bunch of new items, and even some new pretty substantial systems. So in this video, I wanted to go over the new malignant unique rings we're going to be getting in Season 2 of Diablo 4 that's actually going to be released on November 7th. So it should be the day after this video is actually released. Now with this, there's going to be one unique ring for every one of the classes, and these rings are going to be obtained from Echo of Arshan. And first off, Echo of Arshan is a really good choice, not only because he was the season boss for Season 1, but because he's also one of the easiest bosses to farm his boss materials for. You can basically infinitely farm whispers to be able to constantly face Echo of Arshan, and I would definitely recommend saving up any of these materials you may have and wait until November 7th, then go do the boss. Now this also means that these are probably going to be somewhat easy to get, so if you want to go get this on your character, try a new build with these, or just add this into your existing build, it should actually be pretty easy to get these. Now all 5 of these rings are going to be themed around one of the class-specific malignant heart powers, but most of them have been changed in some way, some of them being weaker, some of them being potentially much stronger. And since these are uniques, a bunch of these rings actually have stats you can't normally get on rings, so some of these different stats could potentially be pretty crazy for certain builds. So first off, we have the Barbarian Ring called Ring of Red Blood. Now the special is after spending 100 Fury within 3 seconds, your next Hammer of the Ancients, Upheaval, or Death Blow is a guaranteed crit and deals up to 30% increased bonus critical damage, and that's multiplicative scaling, so this is going to be a pretty massive damage increase for any of these abilities. The stats on this ring are strength, attack speed, max fury, resource generation, and attack speed is pretty crazy because you can't normally get attack speed on rings, and I think this has the same exact attack speed roll range that you would get on gloves, and I know there's actually a bunch of Barbarian builds in Season 2 that really want more and more attack speed, so depending on if those builds work with this, this could be incredibly strong specifically for some of the stats. Now Barbarian is one of the classes I haven't played a ton of, especially within Season 2, so this could be terrible, but overall this does seem to be decently strong, especially when mixing in some of these stats. And then next up, we have the Druid Ring, which is Eredi's Inexorable Will. And the special on this is when casting an ultimate skill and 5 seconds after, you pull in distant enemies and deal some amount of base physical damage to them. The damage is increased by 1% per 1 point of willpower you have, and this damage scaling is multiplicative. And the stats on this are a percent willpower roll, damage to close enemies, lucky a chance, and ultimate skill cooldown reduction. And what's interesting is both willpower percent and ultimate skill cooldown reduction both aren't rolls you can normally get on rings, and those are both really good if you're using this and really good for most druid builds, and the general rolls on this ring are actually really good. Damage to close is definitely one of the best damage rolls since Season 2, and lucky a chance is used on basically every single druid build, so actually pretty good rolls. Now the special on this is pretty interesting because it's been heavily changed from the Malignant Heart. The Malignant Heart in Season 1 was when you use your ultimate, you pull up to 50 enemies close to you, so when you're just running around, you're constantly pulling stuff to you. This is just when you ultimate and 5 seconds after. Now this change from what the Malignant Heart was is it's going to mean that Grisly Rage is not near as strong with this as it was with the Malignant Heart, because Grisly Rage builds want to be in Grisly Rage as long as possible. So this is actually going to be much better for builds not using Grisly Rage. The first thing I think of is a Landslide Druid where you're using Petrify. So Petrify is going to be generally a low cooldown, and it's not something you sit in, so you're going to be able to use it generally much more frequently, and just because of how Petrify works, stunning everything, then pulling it all together is going to be really good. And then we have the damage proc, which I think is going to be much stronger than you may think by first looking at it. So this damage proc does some base damage and its physical damage, and then its damage is increased by 1% per 1 willpower you have. Now this tooltip is also based off of an 800 item level ring. We can go up to 925. This also isn't upgraded, meaning I think the base damage roll of this can probably get to 4,000 or more off of base damage. Now Now that's just base damage. You also have the scaling on this from the willpower, and it's physical damage, so that's also going to be more scaling and just general scaling through other stats. From some of the small amount of math I did off of this based off my Druid in game, which has around 700 willpower, not counting in the percent willpower increase, this could be hitting over 30,000 damage as a base roll damage without any physical damage applied into that, just using your ultimate. And 30,000 is actually quite a lot in this season, and again, that's a base roll without the percent willpower, so the actual damage proc of this could be pretty crazy. And if you're using certain builds that can ultimate a lot, this could actually add a massive amount of damage into your build, and the ring is actually decently well rolled, so I think this will probably be used for quite a lot of builds. And then next up we have the Necromancer Ring, which is the Ring of Sacrilegious Soul. The special of this is you automatically activate the following equip skills on corpses around you: Raise Skeleton every 1 second, Corpse Explosion every 1 second, and Corpse Tendrils every 8 seconds. The stats on this are Lucky at Chance, Max Life, Max Essence, and plus ranks to all corpse skills. So the rolls on this do actually seem decent. I don't know if the Max Essence roll is actually going to be good. I guess it depends on what build you're going to be using, but overall the rolls do seem decent. It doesn't seem like terrible rolls that would make you not want to use the ring. But this power seems to be the most hyped one off any of these rings. Automatically cast Raise Skeleton, which will be raising your warriors and your mages. I'm not sure if it'll be raising your skeletal priests to buff all of your skeletons. I don't think this power actually did that in season 1, but basically all of these are changed in some way, so it could potentially work on this. And it just seems to make most Necromancer builds a lot more fun to play because it's auto casting these abilities. So overall, pretty good. I think a lot of people are going to use this just because this ring feels much better to use. And then next up, we have the Rogue Ring, which is the Writhing Band of Trickery. The special is casting a subterfuge skill leaves behind a decoy trap that continuously taunts and lures enemies. The decoy trap explodes after 3 seconds, dealing 8,000 base shadow damage, can occur every 12 seconds. The stats on this are Critical Strike Chance, Critical Strike Damage, Damage to Crowd Controlled, and Max Life. So the stat rolls on this seem pretty good. Crit Chance, Crit Damage are basically going to be good with every build. Max Life is going to be good with every build. So the actual stat rolls on this seem to be pretty good, maybe the best out of any of the rings, but I don't know if this power is super well liked. From some of the comments I've seen, it seems like this one was the least used one from season 1. Now I didn't really play a rogue at all in season 1, so that may be wrong, but I've just seen a lot of people not really being super excited for the power on this ring specifically. But maybe with all the changes for season 2, maybe this could actually be really good. It does have pretty good base damage, and it also scales off of shadow damage, so the damage roll on the proc may be good enough to use. And then finally, we have the Sorcerer Ring, which is Tal Rasha's Iridescent Loop. The special on this is for each type of elemental damage you deal, gain up to 15% multiplicative increased damage for 4 seconds. Dealing elemental damage refreshes all bonuses. So this means if you're using a build that has all your different elements, you're just going to be dealing some massive damage increase. And I do like how this is really harkening back to a lot of stuff from Diablo 3. Tal Rasha's was on half the sets, a bunch of different legendaries, so it is cool that they're bringing some of that back. Now the stats on this are non-physical damage, Lucky at Chance, resource generation, and cooldown reduction. And I don't think non-physical damage can be rolled on rings. That's also kind of more of a sorcerer stat. And I think these stats are almost perfect for Ball Lightning Sorcerer, which was already ridiculously strong. Also really good stats for a lot of other builds as well. And the proc on this is just kind of godly, it seems. Now you may have to switch around some builds a little bit because most builds are still using like 3 defensives or more defensives. And I don't know if some of those are going to proc because you need to deal elemental damage. So you may have to take some other effects to try to get this damage proc, because 15% multiplicative damage just multiplied multiple times over is ridiculous. So you would want to have one of every element because the damage bonus on this is just absolutely absurd. I think this thing's going to be used in probably most builds. But that's all 5 of the new Malignant Rings coming to Season 2 of Diablo 4. And again, these are going to be released on November 7th. These are also going to be coming to Seasonal and Eternal Realms. So these are just permanent parts of the game. And I do really like that they are adding in some things from Season 1 permanently into Diablo 4. Now these are changed up a little bit, but they are very reminiscent of those Malignant Hearts from Season 1. And even though Season 1 really didn't have much new stuff added, some of those hearts were really interesting. So it's nice that they're taking that, modifying it a little bit to make it permanent parts of the game. So again, I would start start saving up all those Varshan summoning resources so you could go spam run this on November 7th. Get these rings if you want to try them out in your build. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.